Kevin Feige, you're in trouble, boy. Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Saturday's edition of the DC Daily. Yes, the MCU is crashing and burning, but Mick, what the hell does this have to do with the DC Daily? We want to hear about DC. This is about DC. This is a great opportunity for DC live action, even if you don't know it. The Batman, well received. James Gunn's Peacemaker, well received. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, well received. So we're on a bit of a run over at DC, despite what's going on behind the scenes with the Flash movie, etc. You know, the last 3 projects for DC live action have been hugely successful. We're on a run. And Black Adam could be hugely successful. Shazam! Fury of the Gods could be hugely successful. They're both going to Hall H, baby, of San Diego Comic-Con. Those panels, Hall H, will be packed full of DC fans just sitting there listening to The Rock and Zachary Levi and David F. Sandberg talking about these movies. Very exciting. Meanwhile, Thor Love and Thunder is being torn to pieces by Marvel fans, by MCU fans. It's got a 69% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that just about makes it fresh, right? I think. I'm not sure. I don't know how it works. I don't care, because that's not how I judge my movies. I don't judge my movies on box office or Rotten Tomatoes critical scores, because we know they're a corrupt site. And the critics who are members of Rotten Tomatoes are also very, very corrupt. I've seen a lot of them talking about Thor, Love and Thunder. Oh, I like this and that, skipping what they didn't like. You think we're fucking stupid. But to the point, Kevin Feige looked at the MCU and saw its popularity and thought, I could do a middling filler phase of the MCU and get away with it. But there's a deeper issue here as well, and the big damage has been done with the wokeness. I've said this on this channel many a time. There is good woke and there's bad woke. For example, Quantum Leap, which I'm re-watching right now, as some of you may well know, has great woke. I watched an episode last night where we're going back to the 60s for these race riots. And it was so well done. You see the racism towards the black people coming from whites, but you also see the racism from black people towards the whites, because, you know, this is the 60s and whites treat them like trash, right? So you can understand that hatred, but it's done in a well-balanced way. Now, Quantum Leap is coming back. I'm just wondering what kind of reaction they will get from the consumer if they do stuff like this now, because unlike those people who were running Quantum Leap back then, today's creatives are propaganda merchants, politicians, hot takers, extremists. They're not artists and they're not talented. And I could be describing Taika Waititi here, right? Because he's not talented. Because anyone could have made Thor Ragnarok with the Hulk and the Thor interactions. They were great. That doesn't make it a good movie. But all of a sudden, everyone was putting this geezer up on a pedestal. So basically, Phase 4 has crashed and burned, and this is great for DC live action because, look, we can't hide. The DCEU has been very messy. There's behind the scenes, it hasn't been handled very well. There's the Snyderverse, the Hamadaverse, blah, blah, blah. But I could read you out all the DCEU films, and I could sit here with a straight face and tell you most of those DCEU films are better than anything in the MCU. Should we try it? It's not saying I haven't tried before, but we'll try it again, right? Because this is interesting. Right, Man of Steel, better than anything in the MCU. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. You can quote me on this. If you don't like it, tough, go away. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, better than anything in the MCU. Wonder Woman 2017, better than anything in the MCU. Zack Snyder's Justice League is better than anything in the MCU. Aquaman is better than anything in the MCU. Shazam outdoes Marvel by doing Marvel. But the difference between Shazam and these kind of so-called funny and friendly, family-friendly MCU movies is that Shazam is still being rewatched today. It's deemed by its peers which is Children, Parents and Families, as a fucking classic. And believe you me, the sequel will make a solid box office. That's how you do it. Congratulations to David F. Sandberg and the people who wrote and constructed that movie. It's made cheaply. You can tell maybe the CGI wasn't perfect at times, but I tell you what, it was a really good war movie and I really enjoyed it. So, you know, I think the DCEU has made a lot of good movies. Now, maybe it's not a great cohesive franchise because they drove away Snyder, but it's, in terms of the individual movies, I think there's a lot of superiority to the MCU. So as I say, there's a big opportunity here. David Zaslav is here. He's trying to find the leader for DC Studios. We are going into a new direction or an older direction. Who knows? But things are happening. We're getting a Blue Beetle movie, which is going to be very, very exciting. And then, you know, this Batgirl movie, again, because this Batgirl movie has lots of diversity. So does Blue Beetle. But I suspect the diversity in these films will be handled very carefully instead of blundering in like Miss Marvel and swarming it in with cultural references. Because no one's opposed to representation and inclusion, but when you swarm it in, like with Miss Marvel, and there's very little story there and it's boring, no one's going to embrace your show. And that's what Kevin Feige and the Marvel Studios and Disney have been busy doing. But it's not just the MCU that's failing. As a Warner Brothers fan historically and a Disney hater at this moment, it wasn't always the case growing up, of course, but as a Warner Brothers fan, I find this very funny because you look at Lightyear flopping, and even Tom Hanks has come out and said, why wasn't Tim Allen voicing Lightyear? Because they're trying to say that that's not the original voice of the movie version of that character, but of course, the voice is based on the original version. So what they're saying is bullshit. Why wasn't Tim Allen allowed to return and do the voice? And Tom Hanks, who is one of the biggest elite iconic actors in the industry today, is speaking against Disney. That's one of the core reasons that film has flopped. But nobody asked for a Lightyear movie. But people are asking for more Minions and Gru all the time. Minions and Gru has destroyed Lightyear at the box office. Something's happening to cinema, everyone. It's changing everything, everywhere, all at once. A celebrated independent movie. Top Gun Maverick. These are the two top movies people are talking about. They're not talking about Thor Love and Thunder, apart from very negative reasons, or Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness should have been making over $2 billion. And let me explain to you why. It came back from the much celebrated, quite right too, Spider-Man No Way Home. Doctor Strange was brilliant in that movie. And then they had problems with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness because Feige got rid of that director because at a convention, the director kind of said something that Feige didn't like, and they had creative differences. Very problematic because they brought in an auteur in Sam Raimi. They brought him in because they knew the film was in trouble and they needed someone who had done CBMs, celebrated CBMs before, to kind of say to the audience, you see, look what we're doing. We're doing something very, very ambitious. This is not the first time they bring in a name to try and garnish something that's not very good. They did it in Thor Love and Thunder as well. I'll explain shortly. So Sam Raimi didn't want a lot of cameos and Easter eggs. As you can see, basically, Feige always insists in some references. That's why you had the Illuminati, because they needed something. But they weren't very interesting cameos, and everyone saw them for what they were, because Sam Raimi didn't want a lot of cameos. He wanted to tell his own story. Ultimately, I don't mind Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but it has its issues. And if that was a longer film with more depth in it and did much more and didn't cut Sam Raimi's movie to pieces so they could get more theatrical viewings, and this is because they lost so much money during the pandemic and they're trying to make it back. That's why MCU movies are being cut down to just over 2 hours. It's despicable. They do not support the auteur. They do not support the directorial vision. And anyone who says they do is fucking wrong and is selling you a lie. So they are in trouble. So they tried to do this again with the garnish with Thor, Love and Thunder. So they tried to bring in Christian Bale and Russell Crowe. Christian Bale and Russell Crowe, between them, have been celebrated in 4 DC movies where they were absolutely fantastic. Christian Bale's best performance as Bruce Wayne was in Batman Begins. Absolutely fantastic to get an indie actor of that fucking level. So you hear he's going to be in Thor, Love and Thunder. You hear that Russell Crowe's going to be in Thor, Love and Thunder. And you think, wow, this is amazing. And it's shit. It's a piss take. Look what they did to Russell's character in Thor, Love and Thunder. Look at the difference between the MCU version of that character and the DCEU version of that character. And that's all you need to know. They've gone too far with the comedy element. They are making fucking fun of you. These are not good movies. These are not good, well-made movies. Taika Waititi is an average director, a failed actor at the end of the day. These are the facts. I could have been called a great director directing, Chris Hemsworth's Thor and the Hulk interacting in Thor Ragnarok. Didn't make it a great film, but those elements were brilliant. Oh, it's a friend from work. Brilliant. The Hulk's there. He's fucking talking. It's amazing. It's like reading the comics. But the rest of it was wham, smack, average. As far as I'm concerned, they had a good scene with Anthony Hopkins and Chris Hemsworth. Brilliant. But most of that film wasn't crap, but it wasn't great either. Overrated. You put Waititi on a pedestal and you get what you deserve. You reap what you sow at the end of the day. An era of creative bankruptcy in entertainment, and MCU are the kings of creative bankruptcy in entertainment. And the way they've overdone the woke shit is terrible, because as I said on the top of the show, there's good woke and bad woke. There's nothing wrong with good social commentary, as they did most every week in Quantum Leap and in other shows. But we live in a different era, because if you're going to make social commentary, these days people are watching. We're all, it's very difficult now because there's this divide, and you've got to do it well. But these are not talented people working in entertainment today. But this is a huge opportunity for DC live action. Because if Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods hit well and they get a good reaction as well over at San Diego Comic-Con. Now, I don't know if they're going to show Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods in the Hall H panel. I don't know if they're going to do that, if they're willing to do that. I think it would be well worth it. We'll have to wait and see what fans who go to San Diego Comic-Con and sit in Hall H, with these brilliant panels get. But I think there's an opportunity here. If we can sort out the problematic elements of the Flash movie, the problematic elements of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I believe that the Black Adam movie and the Black Adam movie and Shazam Fury of the Gods are going to be hugely, hugely celebrated. So I believe the downfall of the MCU is a huge opportunity for the DCEU. It's been a clusterfuck behind the scenes, but as I've already said, we've had 3 pieces of content from the we've had 2 pieces of, we had this year, we've had the Batman, which has nothing to do with the DCEU, and we've had Peacemaker, which is connected to the DCEU. Both celebrated. So far this year, so good. So I believe this is an opportunity if we can take advantage of it. The question is, can we take advantage of it? I surely hope so. It definitely depends on these 2 movies from the DCEU releasing at the end of the year. If they hit big, this could be a big turning point in the war between DC and Marvel. And I say, bring it the fuck on. Candice Patton has played Iris West for the past 8 years in the Flash Arrowverse TV show. She recently did a podcast where she was very unflattering about the fans. She spoke about fans being toxic towards her online. She spoke about the fact that they confuse her. Instead of treating her as Candice, they treat her as Iris West. I'm sorry, Candice, but you are part of the problem here, and let me explain why. people have confused, people and fans have confused actors with their characters for the past 100 fucking years. And back in the day, artists used to keep their mouth shut about it, even finding it quite amusing. But not you. Let me explain to you why fans don't like Iris West. And no, it's not fair that people are being nasty to her online. And in a real world, in a perfect world, we will be going, this is Candice, not Iris. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? So the problem with her is they tried to make this the Iris West show. Again, they tried to do the bait and switch, like this creatively bankrupt industry has been doing to a lot of comic book fare and other things. It's happened with Star Wars. It's happening a lot. So fans don't like Iris West, and that's why. She's a perfectly well-played character by Candice. She's okay, but they have really tried to make this, the Iris West show. I think she was great in the first couple of seasons. Then they really tried to make it about her and the family unit. You're not the Flash. Do you remember the famous line? You're not the Flash. We're the Flash. She said that line, and online fans went after her in a big way. Basically, Iris, so I did it. I confused Candice Patton with Iris. I can't believe I just did that. I'm joking, of course. But basically, Candice, instead of going after your consumer and your fans in this, she was talking about racism as well, and racist fans. That's the only thing they want to talk about these days. But anyway, instead of talking about the issues that fans have with your character, why don't you say this? And you never would, and I understand because you never work again. That I work with creatively bankrupt writers, and they have failed me, and they have failed Iris West. But no, attack your consumer, because you people are at war with your own customers. But this is something else that I want to say, Candice, because this is a very bad look for you and your industry, or should I say our industry. You have millions of fans across the world who celebrate you as an actress and actually like Iris for one reason or the other. You don't celebrate them. Instead, you talk about racist fans and toxic fans because that's all you want to talk about, because that's what you've been told to talk about by your people who represent you and probably Warner Brothers Television as well. So you ignore the people who celebrate you, the thousands upon thousands of people who celebrate you, and focus on the people who don't celebrate you. What does that say about you, your representatives, and the industry as a whole? It doesn't say very much. And this is happening again and again. We talk about Taika Waititi. I saw a picture of him on Twitter saying, I'm going to destroy everything you love, or something like that. They're at war with their own customer. And this isn't going to end well. Ultimately, Hollywood and Western entertainment is going to go bankrupt. You can't keep on abusing your consumer and just focus on politics 24/7. You are here to make money. You are here to entertain. And right now, you are not doing that for the mass audience. And you really still need to be doing that, because that's why we're all here for. We are in charge. We are the king and queen makers. And if you don't understand that, your industry is going to crash and burn, because you may think you can take it, that the industry is so intensely popular and can do whatever it wants that you will never bankrupt yourselves. You will. Nothing in this world is bulletproof, and the entertainment industry certainly is not. So I really hope that DC can take this mentality. This mentality of the way the fans are being treated is why the MCU is crashing and burning. Yes, Thor Love and Thunder has a huge opening weekend, and by Monday they'll be boasting. But by the second weekend it's going to have a huge drop-off, like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness did, and just like Black Widow, which was a worse drop-off as well, which they blame for day and date and the pandemic, and there can be some blame there. But also, people didn't support that movie, and for good reason. So I hope the DCEU and DC live action in the future of it can really take advantage by Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods being great movies, and saying, well, this is what the MCU is now, and this is what we're about to become. This has been the DC Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again for Sunday's edition of the DC Daily. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.